Look at that. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're thrilled to have all of our friends and our guests with us today for this webinar. We're going to be discussing some of our WhyTry strategies and kind of our approach to motivating the unmotivated student. We've been doing this for a long time and working in a lot of different educational capacities, and I think we have some tools and a model that's pretty helpful. We've had got a nice track record with it. And so we're going to share some of that with you today. My name is Jason Johnson. I've been on a few of these, kind of moderating some of them. And today I'm going to share a little bit with you about our model. But I'm thrilled really to be here with two of my favorite humans that I consider colleagues in education, but professional and also friends as well. And we've got Bruce Bushnell and Cory Anderson. And so we all kind of represent the WhyTry organization right now and are excited. So I want to just do a brief introduction of everybody. And then I think we're going to jump right into it. I think we're going to target being about an hour, depending on how things go. We may have some time for Q&A at the end. But we're kind of flexible on the end of it. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Cory Anderson. He spent nearly 2 decades as an educator, beginning as a teacher and then as an administrator, been an assistant principal at a middle school, served as principal at 2 different elementary schools. He pioneered and started one of 2 public STEM programs in the state of Utah, and he helped consult with the State Office of Education on creating STEM standards for schools that would eventually be adopted by the STEM Action Center. He joined WhyTry in 2019, has been an awesome asset to the team, and his perspective has been really valuable for us as we work with educators throughout the country. Welcome, Cory. Happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, next we've got Bruce Bushnell. Bruce has centered his career around promoting youth success. He's an award-winning school counselor. Bruce was named the Counselor of the Year for the state of Utah and was also honored at the White House. He received the national recognition for his counseling interventions. Bruce has been a member of the Executive High School Relations Board, Senior Vice President of the Alpine Counseling Association, and Vice President of the Utah Counselors Association. He now helps youth succeed by presenting passionate WhyTry keynotes and trainings across the country. Bruce, welcome.
I'm excited. It's great to be here. It's great to see a lot of people I recognize that were going in the chat window. So welcome, everybody.
And then, as I mentioned, I'm Jason Johnson. I'm a school psychologist. I've been published on the topic of adolescent resilience. Resilience is kind of my passion. That's what I think attracted me to the WhyTry organization in the first place. I've been with WhyTry for about 5 years now. After I worked in the largest school district in the state of Utah as a school psych. So we're going to talk today about one of those elusive topics that I think is a challenge for every educator everywhere. And then in our current pandemic situation, I think it's been really magnified as many of us have had to switch over to either a blended or a virtual model. And we're going to talk about kind of keys to motivation and trying to motivate those unmotivated students. Bruce is going to share some specific tools and strategies, and Cory's going to share some ideas around that as well. I'm going to start us off, and I just want to start by giving you kind of the basis of our approach. So we represent the WhyTry organization, and for almost 20 years now, we've been teaching social emotional learning and motivation skills and resilience skills to students and educators throughout the country. We're in, like, I think about 23,000 different organizations last time we tried to tally it. And we work in a lot of different areas. And what a lot of people don't understand, I think, fully about the WhyTry approach is that we're kind of equal parts content. So like the material that we share, but also approach. And the approach or the technique is really, I think, what helps really make the difference in our ability to motivate and connect with individuals. So I'm going to give just like a 10-minute overview of kind of the foundation of our approach, kind of the thing that everything else we do rests on. And hopefully it sets Bruce up for what he's going to share. We're really excited Bruce is gonna, I'll tease it a little bit. Bruce is gonna share some tools that we haven't really shared broadly with people in the past, people that have been part of the organization have had access to them, but Bruce gets to do the exciting thing. But here's our foundation. I'm gonna share some slides with you now to give you an idea of what our overall approach is when we talk about kind of our technique, our model for connecting with kids. Our approach is built around this multi-sensory model where we have learning units that have visual metaphors that sit at the center of each learning unit. And the visual images are really helpful because it allows kids to kind of see themselves in our lesson plan, and it leaves our messaging in a way that kind of sticks with people. So I'm going to borrow one of our visual images that we use because it represents where I think a lot of individuals are right now as far as kind of feeling overwhelmed in life. So I've got this picture of this wall, and the kid standing on the ground in front of the wall is kind of stuck. He's got a very limited view. He can only see the challenges that he has in his life in front of him. And those could be anything from history of failure, anger, it could be drugs, fighting, it could be apathy, it could be family problems, it could be negative labels where he doesn't believe that he can do things that he needs to do. And those that limited view can really impact our ability to deal with adversity and to be motivated to connect with things like school. And so the WhyTry approach of how we try to move kids away from this wall and give them kind of an expanded view and motivate them really rests on three pillars. We have kind of our three main pillars of the WhyTry approach, and it's something that we call the new three R's. Many people have heard of the kind of the traditional three R's of education, and those are reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm not going to litigate how we allowed only one of the three R's to start with an R because writing and arithmetic don't start with an R. But our new three R's all start with an R, and it's our formula. If you imagine our organization sitting on three pillars, this is what they would be. The first R, and you can imagine these almost in like a mathematic formula. I will tell you this, my opinion is that any curriculum or intervention that you rest on these three R's will be improved if this sits as your foundation for it. I think it really is that transcendent of an approach. The first R is the R of the relationship. We are a relationship-based organization. Relationships can be leveraged, if you want to use a science term. We can get kids to do things that they may not be inclined to do in the world of education when we leverage our relationships. So everything that we do is designed to build and focus on relationships. Sorry, I jumped ahead to a slide. So no matter what we're doing, we have at the center of it the relationship. We consider it the X factor in all that we do. If you've ever had the experience of having a kid that would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grown-ups in the building, chances are you were leveraging a relationship in some capacity. And so most educators, in my experience, are pretty natural at understanding the importance of relationships, but we need to make sure that we're very intentionally keeping them at the center of everything that we do. And so that sets at the basis of our whole foundational approach. When we work with kids, we'll talk to them sometimes about the challenges that they're experiencing in life, particularly at home or at school or with their peers. And it's kind of interesting, the challenges that they always refer back to, especially at school, are almost always relationship based challenges with friends, or we'll hear the common thing we'll hear is my teachers don't like me, which I know isn't the case. It's rarely the case, but we have to make sure that we're constantly finding ways to communicate to kids that they have value, that they have worth. So that's the first R. The second R is the R of relevance. There we go. And relevance is a thing that I am really passionate about. It involves how we connect our messaging to the kids' lives that we're working with. All of us have a common goal, which is to deliver content. We're either delivering a curriculum or we're delivering an intervention. And our goal is that the kids we deliver it to will be interested in what we're giving them. And if we're not giving it to them in a way that is relevant to their life, they're probably not going to be super interested in what we're delivering. Now, the pandemic has made it extra difficult because now we're trying to figure out how to deliver with relevance, oftentimes through a virtual setting. Um, we look at relevance in two ways. You can kind of divide relevance into two parts. The first half involves helping kids understand how our message applies to their life, helping them see a broader picture of how their choices today might be impacting their future. We're trying to kind of expand their field of vision a little bit, and then trying to connect our message in a way that is relevant to their life. So that's the first half of relevance. The second half of relevance involves how we engage our students, how we connect with our students. And this one is something that I'm really, really passionate about, because this, in my opinion, is one of the big difference makers when we're trying to form those relationships and deliver our message in ways that can really motivate. And so when we look at that second half, some of you were laughing because when you logged in to this morning, we had music playing, and a couple of you mentioned, oh, it wouldn't be a WhyTry workshop if we didn't have music playing. Well, music is a big part of our connection piece. It's something that works very well in a virtual or in a live setting. As a school psych, I can tell you, using music fundamentally changed how I did one-on-one counseling. I had an experience early on where I had a kid that wouldn't talk. I couldn't get him to talk to me, and he had done a particularly problematic thing. And one day I handed him my laptop and asked him to play a song. I said, don't say a single word, but play a song for me that tells me how you're feeling right now. And he played a very intense song, and it communicated to me possibly more than what would have happened if he would have used his words. So I started doing this thing where I would do music counseling, where we would exchange songs back and forth to communicate instead of just speaking, and it became really powerful. Nowadays, when I'm doing stuff in a virtual setting with groups, I actually have the kids that I work with help me build playlists of music that they like that goes along thematically with the message that I'm teaching. And when I have kids help me build a playlist that are songs that they've selected that thematically go along with what we're going to talk about, they're interested in showing up even in a virtual setting to see if their song's going to be played. So we joked, a couple of you were kind of joking about music as an engagement strategy, but we're actually really serious about it. It's a big part of it. Activities are a big part of our approach, stories and metaphors, media and technology. All of these things can be leveraged to help create relevance. Ultimately, are we teaching kids in ways that they like to learn? And we describe this as generational relevance. We need to make sure our message and our material is presented in a generationally relevant, and I would also add a culturally relevant model, and that will help make our messaging more appealing to the kids that we're presenting to. The third R is the R of resilience. And resilience is our end goal. That's what we're trying to help kids gain greater access to, is resilience. Resilience we describe as a person's ability to bounce back from challenges. It kind of starts usually with this question. We'll contemplate, why will one kid give up in the face of adversity and maybe begin to hurt themselves or hurt others, and another kid, in spite of their challenges, will continue to work to try to be better each day? What's the difference between those two individuals? And the difference is, in that moment, one student typically has resilience and one doesn't. And so the big question that resilience research has been trying to answer for 40 years now is this: is resilience something that you're just born with, or is it something you can teach? And the research overwhelmingly shows that resilience is actually something that can be taught. All people have the seeds of resilience in them. Then the question becomes, how do we help foster that? Some kids are born more naturally resilient than others. They just have a greater predisposition towards it. But there's lots of research that shows that it can be taught. And so the WhyTry model, even though we're an SEL program, our end goal is always to try to help build resilience in the kids that we're working with. And one of the cool things about this, when you connect it back to the 3 R's, is this. Resilience research is typically comparing, they compare risk factors and they compare protective factors. And the most consistent protective factor across 40 years of research, the most consistent protective factor that shows up in kids and adolescents who are resilient is the presence of at least one caring adult. And the kid recognizes them as a caring adult. And the significant thing that the research points out is that it doesn't have to be a biological connection to the kid. This caring adult can be a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a counselor, any of those hats that we have to wear oftentimes as educators. So it puts all of us as educators in a unique role where we can really be the conduit for helping influence and increase resilience in these kids. And what we found is that when we utilize relationships to build resilience, then one of the natural things that happens is motivation starts to increase. And I like to use the word, I've used it a couple times, but I really like to use the word leverage, because from a motivation standpoint, sometimes we're trying to get something to move that doesn't want to move. And leverage is one of the best ways to do that. While a relationship is going to be I think your best tool for leveraging those relationships. So if I take all of these and kind of bring it back home to that picture of the kid on the wall, there's kind of a cool thing that happens with those 3 R's. And what happens is we can take those 3 R's and put them right over the top of this kid on the wall. Sorry, I'm going through some of the text that I don't need right here. There we go. And the 3 R's, those foundational 3 R's that our whole organization and approach rests on, lines up really nice with this kid in front of the wall. And the way you can look at it is this way. The way we can move a kid away from that wall. So to get the kid on top of the wall, first thing we need to do is move them. We move them with the relationship, that first R. That's the X factor. From there, we teach specific skills and strategies delivered with relevance to help them understand why they're doing this and why this message applies to them. And the end result is an expanded vision. So that kid on top of the wall still has challenges in our life. We can't eliminate all of their challenges, but if we can move a kid through the relationship, deliver skills with relevance, we can put them in a position where they now have an expanded vision. They see opportunity they didn't see before, and resilience ends up being a byproduct of that. So that's our foundation. That's where everything starts. Everything else we do rests on that model. So I want to throw to Bruce now. Bruce is kind of an expert with some of our tools that are specific to connection and motivation, and he has some tools that he wants to share with you. So Bruce, I'm going to throw over to you. It's all you now.
Thank you, Jason. I'm excited to share this with you. I'm going to start out with something that changed my life as an educator. And it's something we've used to motivate the students that are difficult to reach. And we call it the motivation formula. And I'm just going to teach a brief part of it, but it's and then provide some, I hope, some positive tools. And we have something exciting for you at the end today that we're going to give to everyone that's attending. The motivation formula, Christian Moore, our founder, chose water to represent something. He chose water can be, what's the negative aspects of water? We ask students, and they'll say, well, you can drown, it can flood, flood can destroy everything in its path. It's devastating. It can carry contamination, pollution. But on the other side of water, what's good about water? Water is life-sustaining. It's part of the life cycle. Everything you ate or drank today has its roots or foundation in water. What students will tell you, it's recreational. It's fun. You can boat, you can swim, you can fish. And then water does a lot of other things for us, but it also helps in generating electricity. If you can see that light bulb down at the bottom. So water is pretty amazing, but he chose water to represent life's challenges. And when you're first in a challenge, it creates a lot of emotion. Just showed you their frustration, fear, and anger. But a challenge can be just like water. A challenge can be devastating, can take our life. It can shut us down. And we have a lot of challenges going on with this pandemic. Plus students had, and all of us have had challenges before all these things that just happened recently. And so, but on the other side, on the flip side of what's good about challenges creates growth. It helps you to create what I call a resilient mindset or growth mindset. You become stronger, you become more resilient. You have the ability to have greater empathy, greater gratitude. A challenge can do a lot of great things. It can motivate you to overcome and help you for the next time you have a challenge. And so we take challenges, and when you're initially in it, you have, like I mentioned, anger, fear, frustration, whatever that emotion. A lot of times there's adrenaline when you're first in that challenge, when you're right in it and you're struggling with it. And a lot of our students that are not motivated are facing those challenges, whether it's trauma, setbacks, adversity, whatever it is for them. And a lot of times we can, if we take that adrenaline, we can choose, or we can go in a positive direction. We take that energy and we can go in the positive direction and channel that to produce productive things. And we try to help students go for these 4 energy sources or resources that we've studied motivation. I'm not going to teach that today, but we try to help students tap into those 4 dams or resources that will help them to overcome their challenge and turn it into being something positive. But sometimes it's just a natural place. We're all human, and when we have challenges, sometimes we go in a negative direction, and we call that the flood zone. Think about it. All of the students you're working with, do you have any students that look like this, that are in this flood zone? This is how a student looks in the flood zone. And this, a lot of times, the students that are not motivated, that are not showing up, that are not attending, whether it's online or in person. A student in the flood zone a lot of times looks shut down. They're apathetic. They lack motivation. They take the easiest path of least resistance, the easiest way. They don't want to put a lot of effort into anything. A lot of times they don't look happy. They don't have a lot of self-respect. They don't feel good about themselves or have confidence in themselves. And many times, like I mentioned, energy dies and they shut down, they quit, they give up. And I'm sure you have students that fall in that category. And they have so much pain and so much suffering sometimes because of their challenge and the things they're facing, that sometimes they buy into an incorrect belief, but they feel like if I hurt someone else, it'll help me to feel better. And they lash out and hurt others around them, or they turn to self-defeating behaviors that hurts them, or they hurt themselves. And so we call that the flood zone. And we have a lot of students we work with, and you have to be honest, as an adult, I've been in the flood zone. And I tell students, you can visit the flood zone, but you can't stay there, you can't live there. And we have way too many students and adults, sometimes they're victims. I call it Victimville also. They're just gulping and treading water and they never come out. So when we have a student, a lot of you are faced with that. I hope that's why you showed up today. How do we motivate to help students come out of that flood zone and move forward in their life? And if you look, there's a lifeline or a life preserver. And that's what all of us are, I wanted to mention, all of us are on today: educators, counselors, psychologists, social workers, teachers, whatever your role is, administrators. We really feel that our role and the X factor that Jason mentioned is that lifeline. We are lifelines to these students to help them come out of this flood zone. And so that lifeline we extend, we call it surrendering the one-up relationship. And it's based upon the foundation of surrendering the one-up relationship. I'm going to define it a little bit more in just a minute, but it's based upon these 3 points or values as far as surrendering the one-up relationship. I'm going to put that up a little bigger where you can see that. So 3 keys to surrendering the one-up relationship. The first one, we send this message to students. Let me just say this up front. Surrendering the one-up relationship helps create equity or a win-win in the relationship. So students feel like, that they have a say, that there is equity, and it's a way of raising students up. And so, but it's based upon these 3 points. Students, all of us, but you have value and worth because of who you are, not because of accomplishments or failures. It's not tied to achievement or failure. Whether you get all A's or all F's, it doesn't matter. Whether you're a member of the student council or service organization, captain of the football team, or you're a member of a gang, we surrender the one-up relationship and value and raise all students up. And that's a powerful message. I've had some of my, it changed me as an educator. Some of my greatest experiences been with students that are not motivated. When we've truly surrendered the one-up and focused on that, I've seen what I call many miracles. So that's the first point. And the second point, you are the expert on yourself. Every student has a story, and we need to give them voice. And who knows a person better than themselves? So we need to tap into that and check, be relevant to what's going on in their lives, but give them an opportunity to have that voice and share what they think and feel. And so that's the second point. And then the third one, Jason already mentioned, we're strength-based. We're always looking for positive attributes, what's right with students. Will a lot of times solve some of the things that are not so right. So if we'll focus more on the positive attributes, a lot of times those behaviors and those things that are causing them a lot of problems, sometimes they'll be motivated to move forward, especially if they have this relationship. And so we have developed a lot of strategies. I'm going to share a few today, but let me just share a couple more things about what is surrendering the one-up. What does it mean to surrender the one-up? There's additional things that can go with this, but in a sense, a lot of ways, it's unconditional acceptance. It's the ability, I like this, look past imperfections and still build and lift them up, because no one's perfect. And a lot of the students we work with that are not motivated have a lot of behaviors and things that are struggling with, but we can look past those to build them up, to build that relationship. It's sending a clear message. I believe in you and care about you. And a lot of times I think as educators, I think I did this at times, felt like I was surrendering the one-up in a sense or establishing strong relationships, but I'm not sure I was sending a clear message. And we want there to be no doubt a student knows we truly care. We want them to show up to the virtual online presentation or class. We want them to show up at school, but we believe in them and we care about them. We treat every student with dignity and respect. And again, it's not tied to failure or achievement. And we can see their potential, who they can become. We give them a sense of power, control in their own lives to make decisions for themselves. And we create kind of this, what I already mentioned, the first, equity. We create an even playing field so they feel equal in the relationship. And so I would like to share with you, we have approximately 50 strategies. And I can't, of course, in this webinar, we can't share all those, but we are going to share some things that'll be a document for you, kind of a little packet that's going to have the majority of these strategies. And that's housed in our curriculum, but we got permission to share and give that today. So at the end, we're going to give you those strategies that truly can make a huge difference in helping to motivate the unmotivated. So I'm going to start out with one that I've seen some dramatic effects. And one of the strategies is we call it a passion presentation, but it's allowing every student to, we have them in our WhyTry groups and classes, but we've had whole schools, high schools, middle school, elementary, where the whole school, they figure out a place where every student can demonstrate their passion, where their heart is, what they love, what they care about. And usually we'll start out as the facilitator or the teacher, counselor, whatever our role is, sharing our passion, and then they make a passion presentation. Now they're online. This works really great online. They can do a little PowerPoint. They can do a video. They can tell their story. They can show and tell on a Zoom call. You can do all this online or of course, if they're attending school. This is a great example. This is Kevin Card with the white hat. He worked with me as a counselor for 26 years, and we were really close friends. His passion when we would introduce this in our WhyTry class and groups was to grow big, giant pumpkins. He's kind of crazy. He's kind of obsessed with it. He's grown a pumpkin over 700 pounds. He does contests during Halloween time. But if you look at Kevin here, he builds in that picture down on the left, he's building a little lean-to over his pumpkin. He builds little houses over his pumpkins. This is the truth. He pipes music into his pumpkins. And I always tease him, he tickles him behind the stems, and I won't go and tells him sweet nothings. But the coolest thing, when he comes, and I always tell my wife, she'll treat me better than Kevin treats his pumpkins, I'll die one happy man. But he has a passion for it. So to introduce this, he comes in with a PowerPoint, and he'll show before and after carvings of his pumpkins. He puts on some Halloween Monster Mash, some songs that he does his PowerPoint. Students are engaged. And then he goes through some of the contests he's done and the carvings. And then at the very end, what the coolest thing, Kevin will give each student a little envelope that has a male pumpkin seed and a female pumpkin seed. And he said, and then he gives them little instructions on the back of the envelope, how to plant that seed and grow that pumpkin. They're totally engaged. And that's his passion presentation. And then they come back and tell him how their pumpkins are going. That ties them to him. I broke my wheelbarrow carrying one of his pumpkins out of my backyard. And he'll have the pedigree of the female and the male. He gives them names, and he'll tell them how big they were. And, and then kids get really excited about it. So we started doing that surrendering the one-up strategy. We figured out in our WhyTry groups how to help our students do their passions. Just one quick story. And then because I want to share a couple more, I think we're okay on time. One young lady, very unmotivated. That's what we're talking about today. Her name's Debbie. She was in our WhyTry class, and in school, she had a D- GPA. She would come in, put her head down. She wasn't a behavior problem, but a lot of times she wouldn't attend too. But when she was there, she never did her work. She never got involved. She never participated. Very apathetic, unmotivated, had a D- GPA. She was in our WhyTry class, and I assigned her time for her passion presentation. She said, I'm not doing it. They called me Coach B, Mr. B. I'm not doing it. You can't make me. I said, we don't want to make you. We want you to choose. Do something is there something you love, you care about? And she said, there's nothing. I hate everything. So I kind of left her. I just pulled away. And about 2 weeks before the time she was supposed to do her passion presentation, I asked her one more time, I'm not doing it. You can't make me. And I said, and she was adamant, very vocal. And I figured she's not going to do it. I'm not going to ask her again. But I said, ask her one more time about 3 or 4 days before her presentation. I said, are you sure? Isn't there one thing you like? Isn't there something you do during the summer? She says, well, I do ride horses. Well, tell me a little more about your horses. Well, I have a horse. It's named Root Beer. Well, tell me a little more about Root Beer. Well, I'm in a rodeo club. And she went forward and I won a competition. And so I said, that's it. Just come in and share a picture of Root Beer, a video, or come in and show your trophy that you won, and just tell the group, I'm not doing it. Well, so I figured out she will not do it, but she shocked us all. On the day of her passion, her dad brought her horse to school. We call it the circle. He had it in the trailer. We all went out as a class, gathered around the horse. And then I, being a coach, said, let's go out in the back we have a back field, and put out some orange cones, and you can do your riding routine. And we did that. She and everybody, her fellow students, peers clapped and cheered for her. That was the start. It was a process. It's not just that one experience, but that started all. She started participating in her class. It started transferring over to other classes. She started becoming motivated. She started showing up. And 2 terms after that experience, she was a B+ student. And she ended up graduating in time. But tapping into what she loved really motivated her, and it transformed over into other things. This is a simple one. I'll just do 2 more. This is one that we do with students. A lot of these surrendering the one-up strategies we have can be done with students, can do it also, but you can do it as a facilitator to start it out or whatever. We call them, I'm sure some of you have done something similar. We call it 2 truths and a false. And we say false because we don't want to lie to students, but 2 truths and a false. There's 2 things on here I've done and 1 thing I haven't done. And so I'll just do it really fast, but it's a way that ties students to you, and I'll talk briefly about it in just a second. So here's 3 things on here, 3 choices you have, and I'll tell you, it's amazing what students will do. But I just did this for a group in Ogden on a virtual lesson that I did with them, and they were engaged. But each of you are on the call. You don't have to type it in, but those that like to can type in, and you're going to get 1 false vote. Which one you think is false? I was in a live dance group on live TV for 8 weeks on live TV. I bungee jumped off Rainbow Bridge. and I fought bulls in Mexico. And so then I'll give students an opportunity to guess. If you want to put it on the chat, that's totally up to you, but you don't have to by any means. But just really fast, generally, if I said, how many think I was in a live dance group? Students will raise their hands if I'm in front of them, or let them put in the chat window if it's online. How many think I bungee jumped off Rainbow Bridge? How many think that's false? Each one is, which one do you think is false? And how many think fighting bulls is false? Well, and then I usually say, let's do a drum roll, and we get into it. But here's just quickly, for those that just to give you a feel, the dancing live is, and if you looked at me, if we were in a training, you'd see me bust a move. You know this is true. But I was in a live dance group. Bungee jumped off Rainbow Bridge. I've been the Rainbow Bridge, but I've never bungee. That's the false one. And I did fight bulls in Mexico. That's a whole story. We won't take the time. They were baby calf bulls. I'll just say that. But I was in a matador uniform, had music, and strutted out to the center of the ring. So how does that tie to strengthening them one up? Anytime you can let students know that you're human and share with them and know that you're approachable, that you know, you can, it doesn't have to be the things I had. It could be just simple things you enjoy doing. It could be gardening or whatever, but there's connection points. And when you learn about them and they learn about you, and we have students who can do the same thing, share two things they've done, one that's false in the class or the group or individually. I should mention that all of these things can be done one-on-one, and one-on-one counseling interventions can be done in small groups, and we have it as a classroom curriculum. But this is the X factor. I think a lot of you have done this, a hallmark moment. Anytime you can write a personal note and of recognizing something positive about a student and building them up, lifting them up. You want it to be genuine and sincere, but that can go a long way. Students will put it in their wallets and keep it for a long time. And then this class is your class. In our trainings, even when we're doing on virtual, we have things for students to do when they show up before we start the class. And sometimes it's music. Sometimes we put up a billboard and say, hey, comment about this. Sometimes it's just figuring out a little riddle. There's a variety of things you do, but I would do that in my own class. And then this is my favorite, and I'll end with this one. We okay? Yes. This is my favorite one, and I've done, you can do it virtually. And by the way, we have strategies for how to strengthen the one up online. And also you can do one-on-one and in group or a class. This is one, though, I taught WhyTry to students that weren't very motivated, but I taught with the English teacher and I was a counselor, and we both came into the room. The English teacher they called her Mrs. P and I was Mr. B, Mr. Bushnell. And I came in with a tuxedo and she came in with a formal dress. The students wanted to know, why you dressed up. One young lady said, oh, are you going to a funeral? I said, no, I usually don't put a tux on to go to a funeral. Another person said, the young lady said, are you going to a wedding? That's a possibility. But we built curiosity. Why are you dressed up? And then after we had a lot of comments from the students, Paige and I, Mrs. P and I went out and we brought back silver trays with many chocolate eclairs. So we went around and gave a chocolate eclair to each student. And then now that, what's going on here? Then whoever was designated, I was designated the first time, did this multiple times. I can't get in my tux anymore, but that's another story. But as I came to the front of the class, these were kids that were struggling in school. And they weren't, but I said, we dressed up today for you. We dressed up today because we care about you. We believe in you. We love being with you. We love working with you. We're glad you're here. We're glad. We need you. And that was the message. And those weren't necessarily the exact words, but you could have heard a pin drop. And as a matter of fact, the first lesson we taught was the motivation formula in our SEL curriculum. And so I love that strategy. We have, again, approximately 50 strategies. This one I used all the time, especially when a student is struggling. They sometimes are giving pushback. They're not wanting to participate. And just this, I use this phrase, and I'll end here. But this phrase, I would say all the time, a lot of times I would say, with your permission, I would love to share something with you. Just asking for permission sends a sign of respect that they have a voice. But I would say this to a student that's struggling. You're my boss and I work for you. You're my boss and I work for you. all our strategy, if that doesn't feel comfortable with you, I feel that. I went into education great to work with the community and parents and the staff, but I have a career because of the students. They are my boss. I do work for them. And when you say that with sincerity, it's like the students really, their heads come up, they pay attention. But we have a series of strategies, and I want to again thank all of you. I know you do many things that we put in the category of surrendering the one up. They're not on our list that we're going to give you today, but also some of the things we have on our list. We're building that. We're expanding surrendering the one up to create greater tools and strategies. But we want to give you all those strategies, and Cory will show how you can do that when he gets done presenting what he's presenting today. Anyway, thank you.
Awesome job, Bruce. I'm gonna take over the screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm going to stop. Just move. I'm going to stop share.
You did it. I'm good to go.
You're good.
Hey, I just want to echo a little bit about what Bruce and Jason shared. Bruce, thank you so much. Jason, thank you so much. You know, what I love about what Bruce stated about everything he shared about relationships, you know, when it comes to motivating the unmotivated student, no curriculum on its own is ever going to be able to break that barrier. Because that student's unmotivated for a reason, right? They're dealing with some serious things in their lives. Only an approach is really going to be able to get through and motivate those unmotivated students. And a key part of that approach is a lot about what Bruce talked about, that process. And I really love this story that Bruce shared about the girl who shared her own passion presentation about horseback, about riding horses. Is that, do you know what? A lot of times these kids who are unmotivated, they put up walls that they don't want you to get through, right? And they put up this facade that they don't care and they don't want you to think that you're getting through. And you have to keep trying and trying and trying different ways to surrender the one up until you find that one that breaks through. And you have to be patient. And it's so exciting when that happens and it does break through and you can see that they are listening and buying into what you're presenting. So a great job there. And what Bruce has said there, which is very exciting, at the end of this, we will be sharing a list of those strategies that you can use in both a live setting and a virtual setting. Another great thing that Bruce stated there was, or in all those examples, every single example that Bruce gave there could be done in a virtual setting in one capacity or another. So that's what's exciting about it. It's definitely different, right? It's a little uncomfortable. It's not what we're used to doing, but you can so develop relationships with students in a virtual setting and find ways to surrender the one up to them. And I know that'll make a huge difference. So another key piece to finding ways to motivating a student who's unmotivated, and really to answer the question that we receive frequently when we do these webinars is, how do I get my colleagues to buy into this, right? Because it's one thing to go at this alone in your school, but to get everybody else on board, that can be a little difficult, right? And a little overwhelming, right? How do I get my colleagues to buy into this? And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm excited to talk a little bit about that. To frame it, let's ask a little bit about why does resistance happen sometimes? You know, this is a definition of SEL off of the Castle website, which this is an updated definition that I just want to quickly go through. They say social emotional learning is an integral part of education and human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Well, that seems pretty important, right? Like, who isn't going to buy into that and think that we should do that? Well, you know, the thing about it is that while I know I'm preaching to the choir here, right? I'm assuming, and based on your introductions at the start, a lot of you are behavior interventionists, your service professionals, support professionals in schools as counselors and psychologists, as social workers, as behavior coaches. I saw that in the chat window as I was reading through. So you understand the importance of this, and so do all educators. But a lot of educators went into education with, the intent to teach a specific subject that they're passionate about. They didn't realize that this slide right here was going to become an integral part of what they need to do to get their students to buy in and access school and the curriculum and to learn, right? And so suddenly having SEL become such a core piece of what needs to happen is intimidating, and it's a little scary. And a lot of the resistance that is put up is, gosh, I don't, that's not my job. That's someone else's job to teach them that, right? Like that's kind of a way of thinking that is starting to morph, and we're trying to get our colleagues to buy into that. But change can scare adults, and fear drives that resistance. Fear that I don't know how to teach that. I don't know if I'll be good at teaching that. I was never trained on doing that, right? And so that becomes a fearful thing. And so resistance comes up a little bit. But there's things that we can do to build up and to get buy-in and to create buy-in. So if you're watching this and if you are thinking, oh, how can I get my colleagues to buy into teaching SEL at a school level, or learning how to surrender the one up, how do I get them to participate in all of this as well? Well, there's a few ideas that I want to share. As an administrator, I've pushed several different things from the ground up, trying to get systematic change with regards to different things. And one of the rules I always went by was this 75% rule, right? If I can get 75% of my colleagues or stakeholders on board the bus to make a change, then we are ready to roll, right? And so it's this idea of assessing, okay, so is this something that I want my department to do? Is this something that I want my whole school to do? Is this something that I want all of the counselors in my district to do, right? Like you have to decide on what group of colleagues it is that you're trying to get on the bus with you, and then decide, okay, what is 75% of them, and what can I do to help my colleagues buy in? Here in Utah, we have a fairly famous amusement park called Lagoon. So any of you tuning in from Utah or Idaho or any of the neighboring states, it's an amusement park that's been around since I was a little kid, and it was always exciting to go to. And of course, they always have those amusement park games that you can play, right? One of those famous games that I'm sure you've seen before is one of these rolling games where they have this ball, right? And you have to roll it, and you have to get it over that first hill. But if you roll it too far and it hits the button where that light is, if you look to the right of that, then that's going to sound an alarm, and that means you pushed it too hard. Well, in my metaphor here, this really is what you're trying to do when you try to create buy-in. And that is, you have to push hard enough to get that ball over that first hill. If you don't push hard enough, change is never going to happen. And you're not going to get your colleagues or your administrator to buy in. So you do have to take some steps and get that ball over that first hill. But if you push too hard, it can feel almost like you're sounding an alarm, right? And that you are pushing too hard. And so you have to consider that question: what can I do to generate enough momentum to carry me to the next phase without setting off any alarms? And so that's what I want you to kind of have in the back of your mind as I share a few strategies with you about what that might look like. So here are some ideas that I have seen be done effectively in my time throughout the organizations that I've worked in. You can invite colleagues to a conference, to a workshop, to a webinar. You can invite them and send them the link to this webinar or to other webinars about social emotional learning or surrendering the one up. You can invite an administrator. Many times, the administrator kind of holds the keys to finalizing decisions. And so getting them on the bus can be a key figure to creating that momentum. And so inviting an administrator to a conference or to a workshop or to a webinar can also be a great strategy. And I got to tell you, as an administrator, when I had teachers or faculty members come to me and invite me to look at something with them, that just naturally was much more inviting than coming in and saying this is something we have to have, right? Like that's a different way to frame it. And so there is one way to make it very inviting. And going along with that, you can provide literature or websites or articles that you share with your colleagues or your administrator, and then ask them their opinion on that. Don't just give it to them and say, hey, I think this is awesome, I think you would love it. Give it to them and say, hey, read through this, tell me what you think, because I'm kind of thinking about this too, and I'm trying to develop an opinion, and I'm interested in what your thoughts are as well. And if you give them that power, then it makes them want to engage in a professional discussion about important topics like social emotional learning and the approach that we take, right, with relationships and our curriculum. So that's another great way of doing that. You can also, one thing that I loved when my mental health team would come to me and say, we really want to do this for the faculty. I loved this. And that was when you offered to do a staff professional development on a subject area of expertise, right? Because you guys are experts in your field. You are professional experts in working with students in certain settings, and you have a lot to offer. And when you approach your administrator and say, you know what, I just learned, I've been practicing this concept of surrendering the one up for the last 6 months. And there really is something to it. In fact, some of the teachers have mentioned it to me. I would love to do a professional development for the faculty. I guarantee you, your administrator is going to be like, I would love that. That would be fantastic. Heck, half the times administrators were like, what do we need to do in staff and faculty meetings to be relevant for the teachers and give them tools that are helpful, right? And so you coming forward and providing that creates buy-in, and that will definitely get people on the bus for buying into everything that you do in your role. And then walk the talk, right? Model it in your own space. When you surrender the one up in your own office or in your classroom or in your space, other adults in the building are going to notice it, and they're going to ask about it. And it will inevitably almost evolve that way, where people will be interested, and it will lead to discussions where you can start helping others, develop that growth mindset with regards to social and emotional learning and start to implement it and put it into practice in the school. I want you to know that effective leaders, so speaking from an administrator's point of view, an effective leader listens to their colleagues. They trust the advice of the professionals in the position in the area that they've been trained in. And they allow those that they supervise to try and succeed and fail sometimes. And effective leaders innovate, and they are progressive in their approaches, and they have a growth mindset. The reason I put this here is because I really want one of the things that I've really learned is that you have a voice, and you have a lot to offer to your schools and your organizations. And while it may be a little scary, you shouldn't be fearful of approaching your leaders and your administrator and going out on a limb and sharing some of these things with them. I loved hearing from my psychologist or my social worker. The last school I was principal at was the behavior units for the district. So, all of the most tier 3 students ended up in our school, quite frankly. And so I leaned heavily upon my mental health providers to give advice and tell the direction that we needed to head with certain things, because they are professionals and they know what they're talking about. And I guarantee you that a lot of your administrators believe that about you. And if you were especially in the first 5 years of your career in this field, I could see how you might be a little intimidated. I'm brand new. Everybody's going to look at me as kind of a newer person in this role. Have faith in yourself. You were trained for a reason, and you have a lot to offer. And so I want you to hear that message and know that you can provide a lot in that department. So with that in mind, as you go forward, you just have to be willing. You might be turned down. You may have others disagree with you, but it's important for you to be a voice in SEL. Think big, start small, go slow. Start spreading this with your closest colleagues and with your administrator, and it ultimately can make a huge difference. Anything, Jason or Bruce, you want to add to anything I just shared?
No, I just worked with a person in Oakland, California that wanted to get an SEL curriculum or whatever, and they said we we can't get it. But I said, get your director involved. We kind of talked about a strategy, some of the things you're sharing. And now we're doing a whole series of things for all the counselors, psychologists. And it's really exciting because she was willing to take a risk and invite her director to see it and check in with her. So I like the things you're saying, regardless of whatever it is. It's not necessarily, it's whatever you're trying to do that you're passionate about. Okay.
So along those lines, really quickly to finish up, several people have asked, so what does WhyTry provide? When you talk about the WhyTry approach, our toolkit is all about creating that environment, that safe environment for students to feel where they are cared about. And it doesn't matter, just like Bruce explained, whether they are successful, whether they fail, that you care about them no matter what. So our toolkit is all about creating that environment. And then we use our learning units. What I'm sharing with you on the screen right now is what our toolkit looks online when you use the WhyTry program and the WhyTry approach. And here on the left side, we have all of our units where we address so many of the SEL objectives that were outlined in the CASEL definition for SEL. And within that, we take an approach where we try to create a learning experience that meets students where their different ways of learning are, right? So everybody learns different ways. And so we have visual metaphors, we have learning activities, hundreds of learning activities where we engage students in games and different team building activities to help them interact and to make ties to the social and emotional learning skills that we're trying to teach them. We have resilience boosters that include journal boosters and art boosters and game plan and observation activities. We also have video resources because we know how much kids love their videos and that multimedia. We use music, as we've alluded to in this program, a great way to reach students. Books, lots of different tools that we use to push these learning objectives. As a part of that, we also have a lot of engagement strategies which speak to that approach with regards to those 3 R's that Jason referred to, right? We want to make things relevant. And as a part of that, we want to engage students in a way that helps them buy in. So we have different things here that we utilize in order to be effective facilitators of SEL learning. Bruce went deeply into what we call surrendering the one-up. And so within that curriculum, we give a whole bunch of strategies for surrendering the one-up. In fact, like I said, we will be sharing one of these pieces with you that gives you lots of different examples of what it looks like to surrender the one-up. And we have that in group settings, one-on-one settings, and even in a virtual setting. So we have a lot of different things to offer. And, our whole goal here is to try to get these things in educators' hands. And so, I've got to go back to my PowerPoint. Sorry, guys, let me quickly get back there. So to try to get these back in your hands, can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So to try to get you there, WhyTry is creating what we call a mental health pilot program. And so if you are not currently using WhyTry in your organization, to help you create buy-in with your organization, we're offering to do something that we've never done before. If you are a counselor, a psychologist, or a social worker who's trying to push SEL in your organization and create buy-in, we will offer full access to our tools at a greatly reduced price than we normally do. Regularly, it's $5.99, and that includes training, and that's for a whole year of access, and then every year after that is $99. But for those who registered and attended this webinar, if you schedule a demo with one of our program directors and you have your administrator join in for that demo, all in an effort to create buy-in, WhyTry will offer that exact same package to you for $150. And that includes training for a full year. That is an incredible deal, let me tell you. And so once again, let me enlarge that slide for you. So for those who registered and attended this webinar, I put training there. It's actually a webinar. If you would like to pilot WhyTry at your site, you can schedule a demo with a program director and your administrator. And WhyTry will offer that same package for $150, including training for the first year. Did I get that right, Bruce?
You got it right. Yes.
Awesome. Anything you guys would add in, Bruce or Jason?
No, a lot of people have been asking about the link for the tools. We're going to put that up shortly. The link will be a place where you can get access to the Surrendering the One Up toolkit that we've referenced. We're giving to you, and you can schedule a demo from there as well.
I turned it over to you, Jason, if you want to put up that slide.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put it up. Any closing statements from either of you?
Just sometimes it's always a process, and you want to reach every student, and sometimes that's difficult. But I think students, sometimes we don't get it sometimes, that they do recognize that we do care about them, and it'll come back later on. They'll come back and tell you that you made a huge difference. But I would just like to thank everybody. You are, we have signs going up in lawns all over where people work, or in hospitals. Our hero works here. But I really believe educators and all of you in your roles, we need to have a sign in your lawn or wherever you live that a hero lives here. And thank you for what you do, and for all the good things you do during this pandemic, but even before that, and what you'll do after. But we hope we've done something today that hopefully is helpful. And it's hard to do in just 1 hour. We have a lot of tools and things that we would love to share, but what Cory just shared with you, we have so many tools that can help reach kids that I get passionate about it. That's why I love being here, being with you, and working with educators all across this country. Anyway, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, and I'll add my thanks as well. Thank you everybody for showing up to these. My favorite thing about being with the WhyTry organization is that it really is a community, and the community exists far beyond people that use WhyTry. We're a community of educators, and we're a community of facilitators that are passionate about trying to help people be more resilient and trying to help kids be more resilient. I think it's one of the most important things in the world. And my favorite thing about being part of this is my affiliation with all of you. I've made some incredible friends and people that I consider individuals I look up to through being able to connect with them through our common passion for resilience and social emotional learning. So that's all we have for our presentation. I've got the link up where you can go to access these tools. We're going to be sending out an email as well to you all to give you a link to the video if you want to review this. And then we're going to have it updated probably by Monday on our website. If you click on webinars at whytry.org, you see a list of all our previous webinars. There's some great material there you can review. We've had some great thought leaders come in and join us. We're going to keep doing those. But this one specifically, if you want to review any of this information or share it with any of your colleagues, it should be up by Monday. So thank you so much, everybody. You're all awesome. Thanks for doing this difficult